Good morning. So we were messing with the camera. How's everyone doing? Today in history, in our brewed history, we are going to talk about um, jobs that have gone the way of the dodo, that are no longer around. Some think thanks to the heavens that they are not around. Um, this is Okay, so the first one, I just got to start with this. We're just going to jump right in. A gong farmer. Okay, now this was way back, when they had privies and they had, cesspools and all that stuff, gross stuff. Well, they had to be cleaned out, and that is what a gong farmer was for. It's like one of the most famous gong farmers that there was, and not famous for a good reason. His name was Richard the Raker, and in 1326 he drowned in a cesspool. It was a really dangerous job because the boards could, they crack, they leak, and sometimes they were literally swimming in shit. Uh, yeah, so it was not a highly desirable job. So, you know, yeah, but poor Richard the Raker, that's his claim to fame, is he died. He died in a gross, like, that's disgusting. But I mean, someone had to do it. Someone had to do it. Were they paid well? Probably not. Probably not. Yeah. Usually people like that are not paid well, especially for jobs like that that have to be done, and whatever. So that was a gong farmer. Now, another one that I found that I was really impressed. I was like, that seems like it would be kind of nice. It was a oh, okay. It was a lector, or in lectores, and the reason why it has a Spanish equivalent is because it was started in Cuba. And what a lector was, is they would read to the factory workers in Cuban cigar companies. They would read stories, current events, and they would read as they were rolling the cigars, so that they, entertainment. Also, it brought a sense of community to the workers, and this was something that was, I would imagine, enjoyable. I worked once in a coffee, where we bagged coffee. I just during the busy season starts in October when it starts getting cold. The flavored coffees and stuff as gifts. And I would wear my headphones and I would listen to books while I was, filling the bags with the coffee beans, adding the different flavors, to the beans, grinding them, whatever had to be done. But I was listening to books. Now that would have that it just, it's a very peaceful job, especially something repetitive. Like I would imagine, like rolling, cigar rolling. And so, and not only, I can imagine that not only would this provide entertainment to the people that are rolling these cigars, but it would also, strike up conversation amongst the workers. So I just like, that seems like a job that need. I mean, we got headphones and things for that now, but I think I would love that job. That'd be fun. Except for when if you like to read spicy books. Yeah. Whew. Yeah, we can't read the spicy books. Court of Thorn and Roses, we can't read that out loud. That's a secret. That's a secret book. All right. So the next one is town crier, or a bellman. Now, this was, I mean, it was, I think we all know what town crier was. If you don't, town criers, they, they literally would, usually on market days and whatever, They would, yell out the news, what had happened. The Duke just had a baby. Frank got a new goat. All those things. They would cry them out to the town so the town people would know everybody's business. Everyone who doesn't like to know everybody's business? I do. I'm nosy. I'm not even gonna. So when people like do like, oh, I don't like to gossip. Boo boo, don't lie. Everybody likes gossip. Everybody does. Everybody does. They just don't like to say that they like gossip. But I will. I'll say it. I like it. Will I talk about you? Probably. But would I say it to your face? Yes, I would. So I don't see anything wrong with that. But anyway, the town criers, they would make proclamations. If local laws needed changing, if there was a new whatever, they said it. Now, um, this was what I had to write this one because this one I thought was funny. Now in Germany, in Goslar, Germany, okay, the town crier would remind people not to pollute the river on a certain day of the week. And by pollute the river, I'm assuming doing laundry, maybe farm animals, whatever, because that was their beer making day and they needed the water to be clean. So he would, go out, hear ye, do not take a royal shit in the river today because we're making beer. So that's, I just thought, hmm, okay. I mean, they knew that they knew like we need good water, but we got to share it. So they had a specific day for making water or for making beer. Now, they there are presentations, there are town crier competitions and where they're judged on how loud they are present, like do they have that zhuzh to them. So those are some things that are that they're judged for. So I think that'd be kind of cool. I also would have liked to have been a town crier, although I'm pretty sure in those days they didn't let women, they didn't let women do anything. We couldn't have no fun. Uh, Happy birthday, Anika. Welcome in. So yeah, oh, yeah, they town criers. Anyway, I would have liked that job. The next one was pin setters. Now, pin setters, this was bowling. They set the pins so that they could bowl. Now, these were usually teenage boys, young boys. Again, it was really, they had to move fast, because if they didn't move fast, the bowlers would just throw their not throw, but they would roll uh, their bowling ball down the lane at them. They would get yelled at a lot, told to hurry up. Um, but they didn't. They had to hurry. They had to be quick. So it was a very physical job, very quick paced job. By the 1950s, most, if not all, bowling lanes had automated pin setters. So that job was, it was no more. And maybe for the best, because, I feel like people tend to not treat people well in position. Obviously, I mean, they were like, I'm throwing this 13-pound ball down the lane. You need to be out of the way. So yeah, so they did have to work very fast. Um, you know, but this is there's a trend, as we get more technologically advanced, um, more and more jobs become obsolete. Um, but I mean, there's still, but it also creates jobs. I mean, with the pin setting, yeah, the pin setters, they weren't there anymore, but maintenance, and it created, I would assume, created another job for people who know how to maintain the automated pin setting machines. So that was, you know, pros and cons, good and bad. It's going to happen. So the next one is a lamp lighter. Exactly what it sounds like. The lamplighters, they had a little stick, and they would go through the town, and they would um, messy but worthy food. Mm, I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I don't like messy food. Yeah, that's one of those like ribs and stuff. I don't like. I don't like. Um, but the lamplighters, they lit the lights. Now they also kind of became kind of a night watchman. They kind of pulled double duty for the for the town because they were out at night. Sometimes they would have long ones, then they would go by in the mornings. They were candles, so they were also in charge of not only lighting the lights, but then putting the lights out. In the morning, they had a little snuffer. It would just go through, the little bell-shaped things, and they would put them out. So that is what one of the precursors to patrols and stuff at night. It was just the job. So I would imagine they saw a lot of stuff at night. So another one, okay, which I mean it is, but I remember this. I'm 51, so it's a milkman. Now it's obviously, but it's making a comeback. Okay, as people want fresh milk. Everyone is getting to the where they don't want they want to know the farm it came from. So milk delivery, the milkman is making a comeback in this time. Now, when I grew up in Colorado, and this was in mid to late 80s, early, actually, and even to the early 90s, we did have milk delivered to our house by a farm that was actually maybe 20 minutes out of town. And when I tell people that, they're like, no, you didn't. I'm like, yeah, we did. We got 2 gallons of milk a week. We had a little box out by our front door. We would put the empties in there, rinse them out, put the empties in there, and then I believe it was on Mondays, Sundays or Mondays, the milkman would come. He would take the empties, and we would get new milk. I want to say it was Royal Oak Farm. I don't remember, but it was good milk. But since people are trying to become more, um, conscious of where their food comes from, that's why milk delivery is making a comeback, which I think is kind of neat. Of course, the milkman was blamed for a lot of illegitimate children, um, the milkman babies. Yeah, because I don't know. I mean, did it happen one time and then people were like, oh, I don't know. You know, people are funny when it comes to to things like that. Like it happens one time, and then milkman is blind. Maybe he was actually married to her. Maybe there was a milkman who had a lot of kids, and people are like, yeah, the milkman's kids. Anywho, the next one, following the milkman, this person was called a knocker upper, which is why the phrase it turned if you were being knocked up uh, back in the day, especially in England, you were being woken up. They were the alarm clocks. Um, they would go and they would tap on your windows and make sure you got up for work. That was their job. They had longer sticks for people who lived on, uh, second, third floor, and they would tap on the windows, and that was their job. They were paid to come and tap on your windows and wake you up. Now, uh, that like I said, that the phrase took a turn. Obviously, I would assume after the knocker uppers were no longer needed as alarm clocks became more. Because they were really expensive. They were expensive, and poor people couldn't afford them. 1800s, early 90s, couldn't afford an alarm clock. So, but they could afford a knocker upper. Yeah. Yeah, they could afford a knocker upper to come and wake them up in the morning. But, and then alarm clocks weren't always reliable. So yeah, so I would assume that at some point, yeah, I like to watch like old TV shows like from the 70s, especially English, British. sitcoms and stuff because they crack me up. And there's always a couple of episodes, always in every one, where someone is saying, "Oh, they got knocked up," but they're referring to they got woken up, not made pregnant. So, it's just funny how different words they take on different meanings as we grow, age, whatever. But yeah, the knocker upper. And that was during the Industrial Revolution because people had to get up and go to work. So the next one was an ice cutter. Now I always wondered because they and it's just what it says. They would cut blocks of ice, and that's why we have the term an ice box because they would take the ice to people and they would deliver it. They had wagons that were insulated with hay, and there would be blocks of ice. And we're yeah, um, they would take these blocks of ice and they would pack them into these insulated little wooden cart wagons and they would deliver them to people who had ice boxes, a literal ice box. They would put the big cube of ice in there and would keep food for, my understanding is several days, um, which is kind of what, because I'm just like, one, I, I mean, obviously in Texas they had no ice. I'm just like, this had to be in my head. I'm like a northern United States thing because you're not going to find ice uh, below the Mason-Dixon line. Really, I mean, you're lucky if you find it in the wintertime. So that is, I've just always wondered. Um, That's you know what? And that's what I thought too, because I've looked at it. Sometimes they would just deliver once a week, but they would go out, they would cut, they had ice grabbers, I mean, it was big blocks of ice, and they would deliver it, and they would put it in the ice box. They would deliver it, put it in the ice box, and I'm just like, that's. I mean, it's innovative. It's pretty wild because I'm just like, I didn't think, but I'm like, I, ha- I I've never had a big block of ice. I don't know. I mean, I grew up in Texas and then in Colorado. Colorado, I'm like, but I mean, I've seen snow in Colorado in the middle of summertime. So why? I don't. It's just it's weird. I'd have to look more into that as to why and how long did it last. What kind of ice boxes were they making? I feel like when I think of that, I always think of the ice box in the Indiana Jones in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls, where he gets in the refrigerator and shuts himself in, during the nuclear explosion. I mean, because they were lead lined, so everything was made with lead. If it wasn't good for you, they made it. They made it, which reminds me, that makes me think of the soda jerk, which is another one that uh, has gone. Um, no, soda jerks, they made sodas, Sundays. It was a whole experience for a soda jerk, and it was like at one point, like there was like it was a really popular job, especially as sodas became more and more popular. Um, oh, okay. Very interesting. So the salt blocks being made with, or the ice blocks being made with salty water, that would do it. I mean, because when you make ice cream, you have to put the rock salt around, and I'm just assuming it just makes it colder. That would make sense. Hmm. Yeah, I've often wondered. I'm like, I just don't see how how does ice last that long? That's I'm gonna have to look that up. Um, yeah, I mean, they're paying money for ice, but I mean, they're also paying for the people going and cutting it and bringing it to them and everything. But yeah, that's a good idea. Um, but this also because the soda jerks when they made ice cream, all that other stuff, and when they started paying, this is what I was a little in the 1800s because they put cocaine in their drinks, and like I read that I was like, I mean, we all know Coca-Cola, that's how it has its name because the main ingredient was cocaine. In Coca-Cola, I mean, cocaine and opium were used in a lot of foods and, weird stuff. Um, but when I found out that the soda jerks, uh, yeah, they they did a uh the soda jerks would add the cocaine, like they would add it to the drinks, which is wild when you start thinking about. Like, I mean, because people, it was a family thing going to the soda jerks and everything, and having them make your drinks. But um, hello. So yeah, I just like I knew cocaine was in Coca Cola, but to think that there are people with just little, like, and this is in my head, this is what I'm envisioning, this little bowl of cocaine with this little, spoon, and then just, 2 teaspoons of cocaine to your drink. That's pretty wild. Yeah, and, obviously, as what really became the demise of a soda jerk was, um, yes, exactly. Please, please. And yeah, hold the cocaine on mine, please. I'm trying to cut back. Is the fast food restaurants. Because the sodas and everything, that was kind of the end of the soda jerk because fast food restaurants. Which, good and bad. Cocaine was, I think they stopped using cocaine in the early 1900s. It was like a main ingredient. And, I've seen advertisements for cocaine and methamphetamines, even in the late 1800s, 1900s, um, where like that says it gives you that pep. I'm like, those are drugs. Those are drugs. Um, I was talking with my mom one time, and and yes, yes, Coca Cola. My mom was telling me how this was in the late 50s, 60s, how after she would have one of my siblings, she goes, "Oh, the doctor would give me these pills." She goes, "And I could not eat all day." She goes, "And I would lose weight so fast, and I could clean the whole house all day long and go." And she's like, until 10, 11 o'clock at night. And she goes, "And I would just lose weight so fast." And so I'm like, "Mom, go, those were methamphetamines." She goes, "No, they weren't." She goes, "The doctor gave them to me." I said, Yes, 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 Mom. Those were methamphetamines. That's why they were outlawed. Your doctor prescribed you meth." And I was just like, "Oh, Mama." Yeah, but I mean, it was. I mean, they didn't know. They didn't know. They're like, "Oh, this." Yeah. So it was just, uh, there was a lot of, oh, look what we made, and here, let's give it to people, and we're gonna try it out. Um, Another thing that I thought was, random. It was a job. It was a rat catcher. Now rat catchers. Yes, exactly. There was no. It's just wild. It's wild to me how doctors prescribed stuff, and it was just like, was no one checking on this stuff? And is it safe? Um, well, I guess not. Rat catchers, just what they said, they had to catch the rats. They used, they would use different animals. But, and this became popular obviously during the Dark Ages, the Middle Age, uh, during the Black Death, the plague, because it came from rats, but the fleas on rats, to be more specific, and so yeah, they had to kill. But they also, when the plague became real prominent from rats and everything, was because um, cats were seen as evil animals and witches, familiars, all that, and so people thought they were evil, bad luck, so they started killing all the cats, which was what allowed the rat population to grow, which led to the Black Death. So, there's got to be a balance. There's always got to be a balance. Um, Another one that, and actually, I was just watching this on TV. It was a log driver. If you've ever seen people, when they're on standing on the logs and they're spinning the logs, that was their job. I mean, and it was obviously very dangerous because they would harvest all these logs and they would wait until the springtime. Okay, so they're working all winter cutting down these trees and they make piles. And then when the spring and the river would thaw, these logs would start getting pushed in and being moved downstream. This is before, railroads and trucks and stuff could move them. Um, uh, yeah, it was all cats. It was all cats. But they would drive the logs downstream because, they had to move them. And so they had to get out on the logs because, a log jam, and they had the long sticks to keep the logs moving so they didn't get stuck. And, it was a dangerous job because obviously if you fall off the log, uh, you're gonna get smushed. So yeah, it was you had to be a really good, really fast on your feet. So obviously once they started with trucks and railroads started transporting the logs, it was a job that nobody needed to do anymore. And that's why when you see people, because they do competitions now. If you've ever seen people on a log that are, they're running on top and the log is spinning, that's what their job would have been 100 years ago. They would have been a log driver. Um, Another job that I thought was weird, and this was like, again, Middle Ages, 13, 14, 1500s, was a resurrectionist. Um, they were, they said that okay, a resurrectionist, they needed bodies, they needed cadavers. The hospitals and stuff, they needed resurrectionists. And the resurrectionists, they would go and steal bodies for them because they were only allowed so many per year. There was an allotment of bodies that they were allowed. Um, and um, everyone says, but it wasn't just. I mean, black cats were, but they were just. This is the thing. Back to the witches. I mean, they did. They were like, no, no cats. It was just no cats. Black cats especially, but no cats. But the resurrectionists, they stole bodies. They would go and dig up bodies. People started, putting concrete and slabs on top of graves so that it would make it harder. Because what they would do is they would wait until, if there was a funeral that day, and then they would go in that night and they would dig the person up and they would sell their body to whatever doctor was needing cadavers to work on. So that was their job. That was what they did, and they got paid good money. So it was like people had patrolmen. I mean, I just, it just makes me think of Ed Gein. I mean, I don't know anyone that works with not works with. I'm just like going into a cemetery at night and digging at people. uh, It, it's you're a goblin. Like but I mean, they can call you a resurrectionist. That's a nice way of saying you're a goblin. Um, yeah, that. Uh, like people will do just about anything for money. Universities, they needed bodies, and the resurrectionists provided that. This one, I am going to have to post a picture of this. Okay, this was a job even up to in World War I. It was uh, aircraft listeners. Okay, I saw a picture of someone. They had uh, literally, it looked like satellite on their ears, and it was they listened. They would stand out there and they would listen for incoming aircraft, whatever. And they would wear these cones on their ears and stand out there. And I saw a picture. I'm gonna have to post it. I'll have to find it and post it because um, that was they. They do. People, and like, oh, okay, if you're gonna pay me, I'll do it. I'll do it. So I, ugh. But anyway, and so in World War II, they had Japan had, they called them war tubas. Just think, like, if you've ever seen the cartoons where someone's like, and they got the, like, a big phonograph, like a tuba, and but they listen to it. That's what they were doing. This is before sonar, radar. You just had to be able to hear whatever advantages you could use to hear better. That was what they did. And then another one was, which I thought was weird, was human computers. Um, but these were people that, they did, like, it was a thing. And obviously, once we got computers, we didn't need the human computers. We just needed humans to operate the computers. Um, so that was, I mean, I get it. I just feel like they were really smart and needed a better name than a human computer. One that I thought was really, that kind of goes with the gong farmer. The gong farmer being someone who went in and cleaned out the privies back in the day. Another one was the Jake's farmer, and he was a night soil collector. Obviously, before we had a sewer system, and they would come at night, and they would, because there was no way that people had to get rid of waste naturally, so they, uh, but they did, just that they came out and they cleaned it. That was what they did. It was a Jake farmer. Someone has to do it. Someone has to do it. Okay, so there's two that are both gone. Um, the telegraphist, which is, they were someone that worked the telegraph, and these were really important jobs. And actually, the telegraphist had it like, was someone, the telegraphist, and then it was the aircraft listeners. Their jobs were really important. Like, they would have, um, as important as an officer because of the work that they did. The telegraphists, they were the ones that sent telegraphs, and then their job was obsolete, and we had became obsolete to switchboard operators. Switchboard operators, which I thought was funny when they first started doing it in the, uh, late 1800s. Because when phones came out, they had to be manually connected where they were going in, and they had teenage boys doing this first, which I feel like y'all just did not want women doing nothing. But no, I mean, it was just, they had teenage boys doing it, and then they stopped doing teenage boys because they were rude on the phone. Um, yeah, I don't know whose bright idea that was, but yeah, they put teenage boys as switchboard operators first. And they're like, you know what? They suck at this. We're gonna bring in some ladies that, and so the switchboard operators came in and they would connect. And then obviously, oh, we'll say 70, just as things became more operated, 60s, 70s, 50s even, you could, you didn't need them so more because they would automatically, um yeah, I'm like, yeah, I don't know whose bright idea it was to put a teenage boy in charge of a telephone. I mean, it just goes to show, uh, times change, but people haven't. I don't care. I don't care. 1,000 years from now, people are going to, they're going to have the same problems because people do not change. Times change, circumstances change. People don't change. Teenage boys 130, 140 years ago were still shits. They were still shits. And they put them in charge of the town. But anyway, switchboard operator, that's obviously, we don't need that anymore. Digital. One that I thought was, and I'm still trying to understand this job. Okay, it was a linotype, and I've watched videos, and I still, it just seems like it would take forever. It was a linotype operator. Now, my basic understanding with this one is they would set the type, for a newspaper, and it would print. And it was, you know, you had to be highly, I obviously pay attention to detail and things like that, because the linotype operators, you know, if you misspell it, that board's going to be misspelled for every paper that goes out. So they had to set the type, um, in each line. So I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, I'm assuming that all of these letters are, you know, they can be moved. You can, you know, because why would you make something permanent for one use? Um, but from some of the things that I've watched and I've seen, I'm like, it looks, I don't know. I don't think it's permanent. Like the putting, setting the letters being permanent. To me, it's just like, it looks like just a huge room size typewriter is what it reminds me of. Um, and I was just like, I I, that's, I mean, that's the best way I can think to explain it. It's just manually putting in letters, except what they eventually developed a typewriter for. Anyway, it's kind of, it's hard to explain. It's hard to understand. Like, it's one of those jobs I'm just like, I just don't understand how this was the best way y'all figured out how to make a newspaper. But you know, the next one, okay, this one I wrote down because of the name. It's a slubber doffer, slubber doffers. And while I thought this was going to be something gross, it really isn't. Um, hello. He a slubber doffer was a kid. They changed the threads and the bobbins in the sewing mills. And that was their job. Why they were called slubber, I couldn't figure it. I'm like, it just didn't make sense. Um, oh, I'm 51. I'm fine. I'm fine. Um, and the slubber doffers, yeah, that was just their job. Is they changed the thread bobbins. But I mean, it was dangerous. Once we had child labor laws, those darn pesky child labor laws, they, and then they found other automated ways to do it. So, we didn't need a flubber doffer, flubber doffer, a flubber doffer. Man. Now, this was another one. Okay, this one, the phrenologist. Um, I get told that a lot. Thank you, Imperial. I do get told that a lot. Um, if okay, so the next one, the phrenologist. Now, this was obviously like people. Okay, so a phrenologist would study the bumps on the head. This was, Middle Ages. They would study the bumps on the head. I mean, they had maps and stuff. Certain bumps meant certain things to certain people. And of course, people use this as a racial thing to say that some were better than others because of different. I mean, it's what people do. Obviously, it has no scientific base. I mean, it was just I I think someone I think someone just had a bump on their head and they're like, "That's your smart bump," and I don't know, but that was just such a weird, um I have a I have a coffee warm, but thank you. So yeah, it was, yeah, phrenologist, and obviously there are no more phrenologists. Um, and let me see, oh, next, okay, because some of these jobs, they have really, the next one is a gandy dancer. Um, and if you've ever seen any kind of movie where they're building a railroad, they have the songs because there was a rhythm to hammering the spikes into the the railroad ties. Um, and the Gandy dancer, his job was to keep the rhythm going so that they would not mess up. I just I didn't realize that there was a specific person that was in charge of keeping the rhythm on the railroads. Um, um, yeah. So yeah, there was actually someone whose job was to um keep the rhythm for the railroad so that they could. It's just I'm just assuming to keep it more level. You know, when you're hammering something, um, it's like when you're doing something, you kind of have to go around doing it at different times so that you get it even. So I'm just assuming that the hammering at the same time on a tie keeps it level as it's being hammered in, is what I'm thinking. Um, because I had never really thought much about why. I thought it was just, we're just going to sing songs while we work on the railroad, because this job sucks and we're trying to make it as fun as possible. That's what I thought. So, uh, we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, Gandy Dancer. So then there's two more. One, leech collector. Just what they said, because they used leeches to lead people to, for medicine. Um, they would actually, the leech collectors would wander out into a leech infested water, with their pants rolled up and let the leeches attach to their legs. And then they would come out and they would pull the leeches off and they would go and sell them to doctors and stuff. Leeching is actually making a comeback for like homeopathic and different medicines and stuff. Bloodletting, I don't know. Eh, eh, I would not ever want to have a leech attached to me. I watched Stand By Me, and watching Will Wheaton almost pass out, because he found a leech on his nether regions. Yeah, it's made. I'm not. I'm not a boy, but I don't want a leech on me. So yeah, Stand By Me has made me very leery of leeches, and yeah, not a job I want. I mean, is it easy money? I'm sure it is. You walk out, let the leeches suck on your legs, come back out, pull them off, go sell them. Uh, you know, just no, just no, just no. So the last one, this is the last one, the chimney sweep. They again, this used to be done by kids because kids are small; they can get into these little crevices and whatnot. But you know, I mean, all I know about chimney sweeps is what I watched in Mary Poppins, um, and I, I and I do have a fear of people getting stuck in in the chimney because I watched I watched Gremlins as a kid. And if you don't remember in Gremlins, the girlfriend of the boy, when she's telling about how her dad died, her dad tried to go down the chimney and surprise them and got stuck and died. And they didn't find him until the springtime when it got cold or when it got hot out and then the smell. So I just don't, yeah, I don't understand. And then I look at the chimneys way back. I'm like, this doesn't look safe. I feel like someone should have invented a longer brush, some other way. I mean, but it was more important back then, 1800s, 19, because they would catch fire. Everything caught fire. Everything, it seemed like I mean, people were using fire everywhere. The Great Fire of Chicago, theaters caught fire all the time because of the oil lamps that they used to illuminate the stage. So that's why there's so many haunted theaters, because everything was catching fire because they were using it everywhere, and little to no safety. Titanic, all those things, before regulations and all that. So yeah, chimney sweep. Obviously, mm, I mean, I can go buy a little log, uh, and burn it, and it'll clean the chimney without having to touch it. So anyway, um, oh no, I was talking about Gremlins because her dad, he got stuck in the chimney. And that was just something that started like that. That started a fear of mine, just of chimneys. I was just like, I just don't understand. So chimney sweeps, they give me a bit of anxiety. Um, and I even just watching, like in Mary Poppins and stuff, when Dick Van Dyke, I'm just like, that's job sounds horrible. That just sounds horrible. So, anyway, I am going to get out of here and go go get ready for my day. Uh, Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will be here on Friday. Bye.